Okay, so this is part 2 of this particular NDE, which I think personally is one of the most, I just feel like there's going to be so many answers in this NDE for those who know, what to look for. And so that's why I'm sharing it. Like, I don't know that anybody's really watching this, and that's okay. The people who need to see this will find it. I put that prayer out there. And I also hope that this particular series, NDE Talk, I'd like to make it like a group discussion for people who have been researching. I've noticed that in the comments of a lot of these NDE stories, people are asking questions and just wondering what it's all about. And I think we'll get to an answer quicker if we all work together. Okay, so I'm starting here where I ended. Suddenly the sun disappeared and I saw a moon. I was in a different world. Everything was black but the moon, which was right in front of me. It was much clearer and more refulgent than the moon in our world. There was not a trace of blackness in it. The moon was surrounded by a wreath of little bright stars. I kept staring at this shiny moon when suddenly I felt a strange sensation entering through my left eye and spreading into the deepest recesses of my brain. I was wondering about the fact that I could distinctly see the moon with my left eye that had always been weaker than my right eye. And I suddenly realized that right in front of me were all the answers to any questions we might have on Earth. Okay, so I made a couple of comments here. Let me see. Okay, that was from before. So I had the question about the left eye. Lisa Left Eye Lopez of TLC, way back in the 90s. Way back in the 90s. She was known for becoming quite spiritual and going on a spiritual journey, and was actually, I think, in pursuit of the truth when she passed under weird circumstances. Rest in peace. But she covered her left eye, and I always wondered about that. Like, what did that really mean? And if you know, again, please comment. This is an open discussion. So when he mentioned that his left eye had always been weaker, and yet somehow he was receiving this information through his left eye, I said, there's something here. There's definitely something here. Don't know what it is, but there's something here. Okay, so is there any significance to the left eye and this knowledge? Another thing I noticed is that a lot of NDEers have that moment. Actually, literally, there's no coincidences. Just watched an NDE from a woman who was a radio host, and she wrote a book, and I'll post I'll put a link to her NDE and possibly to her book, where she's asking a lot of questions of God. And it seems like for a lot of NDEers, before they leave, if they're in this black void or speaking to being they term to be God, or a guide, they get answers to pretty much any question that they have or could have. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm actually thinking about it right now, where it's weird that for some people they just get past a certain point, and it does seem to be like a point, like a threshold, when your soul memory starts to return. And that's a key to what I'm saying right now is very key, and something that I've heard in a lot of different spaces, that some people may never even get past that threshold. They might still be like in the astral realms, where there can be deception, there can be all these tricksters and shapeshifters, and they could have these experiences that are really not genuine. I mean, they experience it because it happened, but it's not genuinely who they think they're communicating with, because they haven't allowed enough time to pass, quote unquote time, because there's no time out there, but enough quote unquote time or experiences to have passed, and gotten far enough away from this realm in order to remember who they are and to regain those powers, I guess. So it makes me wonder, or if she had gotten past that point, it seems as if they already have the answers, so there would not be a need to ask anyone any question. It would just come to them, right? So for this particular NDEer, this young boy, his soul that found its way to this light or white world. He's communicating with this light being. After after communicating with two beings, again, he didn't see the first two. I believe that he only heard voices, but it were two voices, and now it's the light being he's been communicating with. Now he's seeing a moon, and as he's looking at the moon, his left eye is can see distinctly, and he starts to receive a lot of answers to his questions. So that's where we're at. And let's see if I can continue here. Okay, so he says, I got very excited about this and tried to locate the place about which I wanted to tell our scientists on Earth that they should come and see this extraordinary place. I tried to pinpoint this place by looking on the left side of the moon and counting the little stars. However, in doing so, I realized that they were not stars, but in turn little moons. Again, I was looking at the left side of the moon, and the more I was looking, the more little moons were coming up in a straight line, one little moon after the other. There was no hope of locating this place. Then I began to feel cold, and I was shivering. I remember the sun of our world, its warmth that sometimes may have been too hot, but overall it was life-giving warmth. I desperately wanted to return to the bright living sun. Only then did I realize that I was looking at the moon with my left eye while my right eye was closed. I wanted to open my right eye to see the sun again, but I was not able to. So here I'm going to stop, because for starters, how did he, like, what body is he using? I had assumed that he was an orb of light as opposed to the astral body. But he's making it seem as if he has an astral body, like he's is a form of himself, because he's not physical. His physical body was left on Earth. A form of himself that has what he feels are a left and a right eye. The other thing that most people, especially as they leave and go further away from their body and this physical experience, they say that they have 360-degree sight. They don't term that they can see something out of a left or a right eye. So this, again, very young soul, it seems like, despite his age, his soul itself seems to be very young, or just not understanding. So as far as it seems that he may have gone, I keep thinking that he must have still been in the astral plane, because he was there long enough to have regained his understanding. So I have to say that that's probably part of the reason why I think this is such an interesting NDE, because it just doesn't fit with a lot, some of the aspects of other things that I've learned or gathered. And not to say that that's, that I'm correct about this. I'm just saying it just doesn't fit up. So him still feeling like he has a left and right eye in itself, to me, is kind of weird. And I did try searching to see if I could find where this was as well. Given that he was trying to figure out where he was at. And, again, this is all just conjecture. But I did find, what did I find? I'll get back to that in a minute. Okay, so the other comment that I had here is that in a few minutes he says, okay, so he's saying that he's feeling cold. Not only can he not open his right eye, but he's feeling cold. And he's assuming that is because the sun is gone. And when he says he feels cold, again, the sensation, there are people who say they don't have any sensation when they leave the body, and then there's others who say the astral body has even more sense than the physical body. So I guess it's not entirely strange that he's saying that he feels cold. Okay. Let's see. And then I was wondering, I said, given what he's saying, does it mean that the left eye is powered by the moon and then the right eye is powered by the sun there? Just trying to figure out something here. So I think I'm assuming a few things, but let's see. So he said he wanted to leave the moon, which he was no longer interested in. And he wanted to go back to the bright living sun, but he tried in vain and began to have a pain in his head. So lots of physical pains and sensations in whatever body he's in right now. All of a sudden, however, the moon with its black surroundings disappeared, and I saw this incredible bright sun again. Suddenly, the sun started to move backwards, changing its colors to a deep dark red. It kept moving back into the sky until it was a very tiny red light, like a point. Then it began to move very quickly. At one time I saw the bright sun on the left side and the red sun on the right side, dancing as it were from left to right and from right to left. It really feels as if it's trying to communicate with him. He even said that he felt that the sun was trying to communicate with him, so trying to tell him something without words, but I can't figure it out. He clearly didn't figure it out. It might have something to do about where this being or this if he's a star, then he's a sun, where this heavenly body might be located, or what it might be called by us. And so again, like I said, I did some research to try to figure that out, and I'll mention that in a minute. So he said that he felt that the sun was trying to communicate with him. He thought to himself that up here the suns cannot speak but just move around, and that's their way of talking. Then it stood still, and he saw the bright sun in front of the tiny red sun. Nevertheless, he couldn't make out what this was all about. He goes, I regarded the whole spectacle more as a funny and entertaining act than anything else. However, it was not funny at all. I suddenly felt that I should be transferred back into the world with the shiny moon, and I remembered the unpleasant pain and the cold that I had encountered there. Suddenly I realized that the bright sun in front of me was the shiny moon, and that the red sun had the moon safely under control, making it in fact one sun. So very interesting. The red sun, I gotta wonder if what they're talking about, red dwarfs, or it's definitely something in regards to celestial or heavenly bodies that he's trying to communicate. And if anybody has any ideas on this, then please share. Suddenly I realized that the bright sun in front of me was the shiny moon. Okay, this was the message that the sun had wanted to get across. Then the being of light wanted to talk to me on a man-to-man basis. He placed me on top of a high mountain where I had to sit on a large piece of rock. Now this has to be a massive being to be able to pick him up and just place him on top of a mountain. Just unreal. Because I asked him why he had wanted to destroy me. He told me that there existed also evil, but very powerful and cunning beings who were his enemies, with whom he had been fighting constantly. He also told me that I had to warn the world against them, and I automatically nodded in agreement. He said that his enemies had wanted to play a trick on him by using me as a kind of trap. And so this is where it starts to get really interesting. Okay. So in these comments, I kind of mentioned who I think this being might have been. Some things came up in Aboriginal folklore about, and you're like, how did you get there? I got there from going from let's see if I have this other comment here. Okay, so when he said the sun and the moon combined, I looked up a red sun and moon, and Artemis came up. And Scorpius is a beautiful and easily recognizable constellation, of which Artemis is part of. It represents a scorpion sent by the goddess Artemis to kill the hunter Orion in a story from Greek mythology. From there I searched what constellation this Greek legend corresponded to and found the Scorpius constellation. And from there I found the brightest star, because remember this was a very bright, or he called it the light world, and called Earth, or our universe, the dark world. And the brightest star there, was called Antares. I don't know how to pronounce that, but Antares, I think, which is a reddish hue. It's a red star. Then found it was a binary star system with its two components called Scorpii A and Scorpii B. Scorpii A, Scorpii B. And I found this to be noteworthy. Its traditional name, Antares, was derived from the ancient Greek meaning rival to Ares, so the opponent to our Mars. And he said very clearly that in our world he has he has enemies. So just as I kind of dived into that, I started to see things. It might have been making them connect, because I wanted an answer, but it did seem as if they kind of came together. And then furthermore, connected to this was, like I said, a folklore from the Aboriginal people of South Australia, where they believe that Antares, so that particular star, is named Wayangari, meaning red man. And they say that he, let me see if I have the story here, but it was like he was an initiate. He was an initiate, and he couldn't really connect with or be with women in order to be a full initiate. And there were two women who were like interested in him. And so because he was forbidden to do this, he ran up into the sky, and these two women followed him and became his wives. So remember, when this young soul first came to this area, it was those two voices that were speaking to him and kind of, taking care of him while they looked for this main star. And so really, if you look at this, there's only 3 beings that he's coming in contact with. So I found that very interesting, to think that it could be this star and its 2 accompanying stars. And then the way that he's just communicating with them or seeing them is the only way that he could visualize a star, So very interesting. I found this extremely interesting. And it would be great if that was the answer, if he was really communicating with these celestial beings, or like some would say demigods, and in that realm. It would open up a whole world of possibilities. Okay, so that's what I got with that. And the other thing that kept coming up to me when I first read it, though, was that he was Zeus, but that's because of my limited, without any kind of research. He just felt like that kind of energy, that kind of and then they mentioned a thunderbolt, but that could be anything. But that was my first initial gut thought, was like, hey, is this Zeus? Because he ultimately thinks that it's Jesus, but then he's going, this being never said that's who he is. He just, like a lot of NDEers, when he comes back, trying to put the pieces together and using what he understands and what he's seen, and that's who he determined it to be. So a lot of these just end up giving you a lot more questions, but I think it's worth it to kind of go through this. And I just found, just look at the interaction between him and this being. I just felt like this being was just so arrogant, and just I feel this a lot with these beings that they say they attribute to Jesus, because that's all they know, to be a mighty energy and above them. But they don't understand this world is, these dimensions are teeming with these highly advanced beings. And so we have to really broaden our understanding of this, and then broaden our dictionary of possible characters that we can be coming across in these realms. So he said, okay, so he thought he was a trap, but he had to defend this world and the black one. So now whoever this being is, he's saying that he defends his own world, this light world, and he must also defend the black one. He keeps calling us the black one, but defend our world as well. And I don't know when he's saying world, if he means just the earth, or if he means our whole solar system, universe. His world, however, would be much easier for him to defend, because the evil beings had no power in it, and he had no power in the black world. And this also kind of shocked me a little bit. So it's it also kind of reminded me of Superman, how he, he had power in our world, but maybe not so much in, his home planet of Krypton. So I just wondered if this was similar to that. And then also I recall with the Anunnaki, I believe that they had their power, just based on your planet and your dimension, would alter whether you had more power or less power in another world. I realized, having been positioned in such a way that I was able to overlook a huge stretch of clouds that were marvelously illuminated from below, suddenly a flash of lightning, whose intense light was much greater than that of the bright world, forced me to look up. So that's that might have been, that little piece right here is probably what made me think of Zeus, but clearly it could be a million different other beings. Let's see. Then a big bang followed, but I was totally unperturbed. At the horizon, I saw smoke bulging out of the clouds and gradually taking on the shape of a mushroom. It grew larger and larger and brighter. I was in complete awe. Suddenly, everything was gone. I heard the light call, "Look here." I turned around and I heard screams, and I saw fire and smoke almost surrounding me. I did not comprehend what this was all about, when suddenly the light cried, I will do everything in my power to prevent this from happening. Then everything was over. Again, the bright light wanted to talk about his enemies. However, I was still impressed by what had just happened. So I thought to myself, oh no, not again. So this soul is like definitely still like very childlike. Makes you even wonder like if the soul itself is new. It was a new soul. And maybe that's why he never regained any additional information, because maybe he doesn't have any. So that's got to be an option as well. But him seeing this mushroom cloud, so many NDEers when looking at the future or being shown the future, see this mushroom cloud. And I myself have had visions of this, I was saying, the last year. So, not to, make anyone scared, but out of all the possibilities, because I think that's what these beings are able to do, is see possibilities, just like the same way psychics can see possible, futures, is always a possibility. In the same way, there could be one that has that nuclear future where nuclear war breaks out, or World War III. There's others where it's complete utopia, so for whatever reason, this is the one that this being decided to show him. But what's even more just interesting is the fact that this being feels as if it's his job to take care of the world. And I wouldn't make this being God. Like, he just doesn't sound like, I don't believe that God has enemies. Like, that would be lessening the power of God. To have an enemy would make kind of no sense. So he seems to be an advanced being, or maybe a star, maybe a sun star or whatever, but not, source, source prime, or the grand central sun. So this seems to be just a being that, for whatever reason, feels as if it is a guardian of our world. And so he goes, however, the light made me aware of the fact that this war had been going on for a very long time, and the evil beings had become more and more powerful. And if this continued, he would not see any means of preventing them from taking over everything. He said that if the enemy had really succeeded in coming into this world, the war would have been lost. He would have been powerful enough, no doubt, to fight them off, but the war would have been lost. In the long run, he was really afraid of losing this war. Interesting. And another sure example that he's not God. God wouldn't be afraid of losing anything. So it sounds like what people call the war of the war in the heavens, or the war between light and darkness. It sounds like whatever this is, whether it's an ET, multidimensional, sun, star, demigod, the list is pretty long of possibilities, but it sounds like it's in a war against evil groups. And this is assuming that he's not, evil and manipulating, because God knows I've seen so many of those situations and these experiences. But assuming that he is, quote unquote, really a good guy and really looking out for us, then it appears that we have, which most people would attest to, a dark element here that is trying to take over this world. And you can fill in the blank there. All right, so then it was intimated to me that he needed help. And here's another thing that I've noticed in these NDEs: when they're coming in contact with these beings that don't like to name themselves, so they want you to kind of assume who they are. And many people assume that they're either God or Jesus, a lot of these, but they don't say who they are. They don't make that clear. And then they send the person off on a mission, and it always includes writing a book. It seems like, so writing a book and getting the word out. But we need to really pay attention to those that come back with these missions, and that come from beings that have not clearly stated who and what they are. And more NDEers, if they could, when they're in these spaces, and again, this is saying a lot and asking a lot, but if they could, just say, hey, who are you? And then if they don't answer, or they, then, just ensure that they are the one and infinite creator of all. That there's that, did anything create you? Were you created by anything? And if they can say no to that, then generally you're one step closer to making sure that it's, you're talking to the big guy, So it says, he goes, yes, but how? He answered that the only way I could help him was by going back and telling my world what had happened to me. Yes, a lot of them were sent back and just saying, say what happened, tell them what happened. I was completely shocked to hear him say so because I did not want to go back. I was so depressed that I almost started to cry. All of a sudden he asked, would you like to know what will become of you later on in your life? So here again, they have that ability to see past, present, and future easily. So at the least, they would have to be, I think, fifth dimension, or maybe fourth. Fourth. Going in the fourth dimension, going into fifth, where they can see throughout time. Okay. So all of a sudden he asks, I looked and I answered cheerfully, yes, I would love to. He goes, you will become a teacher. To a certain extent, I was disappointed and repeated, a teacher? He said, imagine a teacher in your world and show me what it is like being one. So this shows you very clearly that he's definitely in another dimension. He can, in a higher dimension, because he can easily see this being's thoughts, and that's what they can do. They can see our thoughts easily. I saw a video recently that kind of explains that, and I'll put a link there as well. This woman is explaining the third to the fourth dimension. So anyway, I imagined quite vividly a teacher who was standing in front of his pupils giving lessons. The light said, no, not that kind of teacher. I was thinking of a university professor lecturing to his students. The light said, not that kind of teacher. You are going to teach the university teachers. I was surprised and almost could not believe it. Besides, I considered this quite difficult. I imagined a map of my world, and I saw myself in future life going from place to place, from university to university, teaching the university teachers. Let's see. Hold on. The university teachers of my world. But the light said, no, not like that. They will come to you. I asked, to my house? And he said, yes. Imagine such a situation. I imagined our house on earth, our living room. I saw myself sitting on a chair opposite a stern-looking, respectable professor trying to teach him. However, I failed. I was too embarrassed and too shy. I said, I do not think I am clever enough to do this. Moreover, I have a speech impediment. He answered, you will become a new type of teacher, and I am going to explain to you in a moment. He then paused, and I looked up and saw myself lying on a hospital bed that was being pushed down a very long corridor by a member of the medical staff. I asked, slightly alarmed, am I being ill? The light said, no, just a little bit confused. You will be taken to a hospital where you will get a shot and fall into a very deep sleep. I was not worried anymore, and the light said, but let me explain this new type of teacher. You are going to teach while being in a sort of sleep. Definitely, you tell me if you think it's anything other than channeling. That he's saying that there's going to be a new type of teacher. Remember, this happened in 1950, I think it was 1953. But a new type of teacher that teaches while they're asleep, right? However, it will not be the kind of sleep that you know of. While being asleep, you will be able to hear and talk, and they will come to you and ask questions. I was deeply impressed, but also worried. So I asked, will I feel pain in this process? He answered, no, it will not hurt you. I gradually became accustomed to the idea of becoming a teacher. I asked, will they also learn their lessons? He made a suggestive face, meaning that he was not sure about that. I asked him another question, will I also teach them when I am awake? He answered, no, you will certainly speak to them when you are awake, but what you say while being asleep will be of much more importance. So if you are in the world of seeking, you know that channeling has just like skyrocketed in the amount of people who are doing it, trying it, assuming that they're doing it, faking it, whatever. It's out there, and it's becoming very, very well known. And so I couldn't help but just assume that this is what that means. And if it is what he's talking about, and it sounds like it can only be the only answer, then is this being the reason why so many people are being being contacted or used as channels as we progress in these days? And if so, what is his purpose? It's coming from a lot of different groups, names, beings, entities, etc. And if it's all coming from this one, not to say that it has to come from this one being, but there's definitely a connection. And this was, to me, another major part of this NDE. And it gets even more interesting from this point. But yeah, so that was important. Let's see. All right, let me go back up here. Okay. And he showed me a room in which I saw myself sitting on a chair talking to someone. I actually did not see myself, neither did I see the person to whom I was speaking. Nevertheless, I definitely knew that it was I, because I was now in that room looking about. I saw the low table, books on the walls, 2 windows, and drapes that were moving in front of a window by a slight draught of wind. Suddenly, the room disappeared and the light said, "Before doing this, you will have to write down everything that has happened to you, every detail of it. You will have to make a scientific report." I said, "Of course," and the light said, "But I'm afraid you will have forgotten everything." I shook my head in disbelief. He said, "You cannot even tell me how you came here." This being is something else. I could not believe him and tried to remember what had happened on Earth. However, to my great surprise, I was not able to do so. The light said, "Do not worry, a book will help you. In fact, there will be 2 books, but the first one will be more important. Besides, you will have many books." Suddenly, the light became quite enthusiastic and said that I was to be the first teacher of this new type, and there would be a lot more to come. See? I'm telling you, it's channeling. And again, very interesting that this being could not, this young soul cannot remember like anything. At this point, if someone had really passed the threshold and gotten out of, the lower realms, it would and should be able to recall who and what it is. So I just keep coming back to that and just wondering on that. Very interesting. Okay. I was disappointed to hear him say so. Nevertheless, the light wanted to show what it meant being the first. He asked, "What do you think? How many people are there in your world?" I tentatively said 40 million maybe. He said, "No, many more. You must not only think of those who are alive. Take into account all the human beings that are dead, and you will have a huge number of people." Now that's important too. I made a comment there because it makes you wonder, have those that have passed left our world? Why is he... Let me make sure I'm not jumping to a conclusion here. He goes, "What do you think? How many people are there in your world?" Yes. He's not saying how many people were there or have there been in your world. He goes, "How many people are there in your world?" And he's telling him to include those that are not alive. What does that really mean? If there's any truth to this, we can imply that he's saying that the souls of all that have ever been on Earth or whoever have passed are either being recycled or are on it in other realms, but still within our world. And let me know if I'm assuming too much here, or if you think that might be correct. Okay, so he goes, "Let us go back in time, as far back as possible, and tell me how far back we should go." I suggested Middle Ages. "No, further back," he said. "The birth of Christ?" "No, further back." I was thinking hard. "Adam and Eve?" "No, not that. Go further back in time and think of what you have learned in your history lessons." So even Adam and Eve. Oh wow, this is interesting. All right, so I was thinking for some time. Eventually I blurted out Stone Age. He was disappointed and he said, "You should have known better, but I think Stone Age will do." He then told me, "What would your answer be?" This guy seems very tough and gruff. Very interesting character. Seems much more like a brutish or aggressive type energy, as opposed to all loving, all knowing type. So again, very interesting to find out who he is, because nothing about him seems like what they portray Jesus to be. Not to say that it can't be, and we can't, maybe the story got skewed, but he's another one that when later when this NDE says that it was Jesus that he spoke to, I can't really wrap my head around that or believe it. Okay, he goes, all right, so Stone Age will do. He then told me that in that age there were not many people living on Earth. However, they were free to walk wherever they wanted to go, and that there were no borders to keep them from roaming about. I said, "How beautiful." I was imagining a map of Europe, which I had seen in mini atlas, with all its borders. I did not have much time to think about all this, because all of a sudden I saw humans back on Earth. I was looking down on a group of people, men and women, who were dressed in furs and sitting around a campfire. So if they're in furs, we can assume, and around a campfire, that they're in a colder climate, right? Let me go down. I could see a woman with her baby. With her baby on her back, and a man. Goodness gracious. Sorry. and a man who was standing in front of the group, obviously making a speech. Another man stood a little apart. All of a sudden, I heard a loud cry of disappointment and the guttural voice of the man in front of the group of people. I did not understand what he was saying. The scene disappeared and the light said, "I am going to translate for you, but you must concentrate very hard." Now pay attention to what's happening here, because not only is this being able to see past, present, and future, see his thoughts, but can also help him to translate within himself. Like, my God. And supposedly he has enemies who are even more powerful, who are trying to take over our world. If there's any truth to that, good luck. So he goes, I certainly wanted to do so because I was eager to hear what this man was talking about. Therefore, I started to concentrate. "You call this concentration?" the light exclaimed. See that attitude? Who is this? "You have to concentrate much harder." I was amazed to hear him say so, because I considered my first attempt quite satisfactory. Nevertheless, he wanted me to do better. The light said, "Let's have another go." I closed my eyes and began concentrating extremely hard. However, the light was not in the least satisfied. He said, "I think it is useless." However, suddenly the tone of his voice became very gentle, and he came close to me and said tenderly, "The reason for me asking you to concentrate so hard is that later on you should be able to tell everyone as accurately as possible. So you need to concentrate like you have never done before on what this man is going to say." So here it's like either he just realized he was being too brutish and is just trying to be nice, or he's being manipulative. And he added in a different voice that betrayed his disappointment, "This is a final attempt. If you fail this time, it will be of no use to try any longer." I was determined to do my best. I closed my eyes again and tried as hard as I could to listen to what I was supposed to hear. This guy's also kind of bipolar. It's very weird. All of a sudden, I was able to understand what the man was saying. He said, "Now we have proof. You have just heard for yourselves what we have been suspecting is true. He who took on the difficult task of making such a dangerous journey has just returned and confirmed our suspicion. They want to resist us." So it's not like whoever they're fighting or going to is not trying to fight them. They're trying to resist them from taking over. "However, we will not put up with that. I have told you again and again. Now the time has come to fight them. We must not wait until they have become stronger. They are still weak now. It is true. Nevertheless, think of the future. We will have to attack them now." He was addressing the group of people in a very impressive manner. I was completely impressed, and I could understand very well why he was forced to attack his enemies. Suddenly, I heard this other man who was standing apart say, "I am primarily a hunter and I fight the animals. I am not going to fight weaklings who start running away the moment they catch sight of us. Every hunter would hurt his pride and honor if he did such a thing. We hunters fight the animals, which are by far more dangerous. Many brave hunters have hurt themselves in their fights. Nevertheless, we are prepared and willing to take the risk because we are hunters. I will never fight these weaklings." As for me, I could not get along with what he was saying. After all, one had to fight one's enemies. I could not understand that it should be more honorable to fight animals than people. However, I could not go on contemplating such things because my eyes were forced to the ground that gradually began to move. So he's almost being shown, basically, the past, but almost like a hologram. Like you just think if you're watching a movie, you see that scene and then you're being pushed, forward to another space. Okay, so at first, so the ground is moving at first slowly, but then faster and faster until I was no longer able to distinguish any details. The movement suddenly came to a halt. I saw grassland in front of me, and in the distance there was the edge of a forest with very high trees. Suddenly I was placed in the woods. Although I could not see anything, I knew that I was in the forest. So he went from the people who are in the cold area to the people who are in the forest. That is right in the middle of a village. I could hear the voices of some people, and I heard someone say, "We cannot run away forever." How many times did we have to run away? Many, many times. Such beasts, they come and destroy our village, and every time we run away, but not this time. This time we are going to stay. It cannot go on like that forever. So it sounds like there's the bullish people in the colder region, and then the meeker people in the forest area that are being attacked, but they want to resist this time. I could feel fear and anxiety. They would have liked to run away as they had done so many times before. However, this time they had made up their minds and intended to stick to their firm resolve. However, they were all full of fear. Some voices said, "They eat meat. Imagine that, meat." In addition, they build huge fires in the prairie. They dance around the fires and bathe in blood. However, what remains the worst, they eat meat. The very thought of it. In the end, they are going to eat our flesh too. Wow. So the aggressors apparently are meat eaters, like serious meat eaters, or I guess you would say hunters, right? And the forest people are, if someone's disconcerted about them eating meat, I would assume that they're eating, fruits, grains, or just, non-meat items, and tend to be much more meek, and that would, peaceful, I guess, in contrast to these other people. And you see this a lot, like, around the time when I was like praying to kind of get answers to this, so I can have an idea what's happening here. I came across some Native American legends, or really just stories about these red-headed, white-skinned, not giants, but they also did have giants who looked like that. That's a whole other story. If you Google it, you'll hear about the tall, giant, red-headed people. But they had stories of these red-headed people who would come and they were giants, would come and attack their village and eat their people, would literally, cannibalize the people. And so they finally, I think out of the whole group, and I'll put a link, because I think I recall the video, I'll put a link to that video so you can see it in detail. But one of the groups of Native Americans finally fought against not fought against them, they trapped them and then set them the cave on fire. And afterwards were kind of considered, they were called the conquerors by the other groups, and kind of looked at in a different way, like maybe not in the best light. And that tends to be the situation ongoing in this particular world, is that you're either the aggressor, that's the bullish conquistador, the people taking over indigenous land, and then, or you're the group that just meekly allows it and kind of just dies off or disappears in history. And if you do fight back, then you kind of become, your worst enemy. You become that which you fought against. And so it's kind of a catch-22, but it's an ongoing, idea. There was also this NDE one time that said that, like, he realized that he had to stop fighting, but then he, and he started to become much more meek. I'm in the same circumstances myself, but became much more meek, and would just allow, the people who were more aggressive to take over, because he realized in the long run that it's better to not be that aggressor, because, spiritually. But then he also realized that if he keeps, and this is a very important note, if he keeps allowing the bullies to win, then that's who will rule the world. And if you look at our world now, is that not the reason why we have so much atrocities and so many problems? We're being led by the bullies. I'll just leave that there. All right, so a woman's voice who was sitting in her hut kept saying repeatedly, "I am afraid. I am terribly afraid. Oh, how scared I am. I am scared, so scared." I was able to feel distinctly her anxiety. Her fear grew stronger and stronger. She kept saying, "I am scared, I am scared." Her fear began to take hold of me. At first I thought, why is she so afraid? She must be hysterical. How on earth can you be so afraid? Nevertheless, I was being immersed deeper and deeper into her feelings of sheer fear. I could not stand it any longer. I thought to myself, I wish she stopped worrying now. It was extremely unpleasant indeed. The other thing about this moment of, this light being able to pull him into this whole scene shows you that maybe a lot of these NDE experiences, when they have the life review, it really could be these advanced beings, ETs, multidimensionals, whoever it is, out there. If you haven't been able to escape and get back to source, or get back to the true creative all, and you're still stuck in the lower realms, it's very possible that they could be using this ability to connect to the Akashic records, or the record of all that happens on earth, and showing you your past, your whole life record, and you assuming that it's a higher authority, as opposed to just one of somebody like this light, who clearly can get angry, who has enemies, and is fallible. He's not God. Very clearly not, the one and only God. And so again, this NDE to me is just boundlessly important to help more people, either see this or read this NDE, because I don't know that the guy who, if you know whether or not this guy is still alive, that would be great. Please let me know. So let's see. Suddenly everything was over, and the light said to me, if they had done nothing, nothing would have happened. It is true. They would have come all the same. However, nothing would have happened. And here I have to say I'm confused. So maybe you guys can explain to me what he means, because I'm assuming he means that if the warring group had come to them, nothing would have happened. Of course something would have happened. I don't quite understand that. This, however, will again lead to further dead persons. Now, pay attention to the fact that he's using the word dead persons, and he even said he was stressing the words dead persons again. So I think this whole thing that he showed him was just to show him that in whatever future he was looking at with the mushroom cloud, he was seeing this age-old fight between these two groups, whatever these two groups are, playing out again, and that it leading to more dead. And now he's not saying dead souls, he's not saying dead people, it's dead persons. And I believe there's a reason why he used that particular word, because when it comes down to it, we are, in the body, when we're not the soul, we are just a personality or a person. We're not ourselves. You wouldn't be saying dead souls, because the souls will keep going, but the people will die, or the body will die. All right, so I said, I felt great apprehension on the part of the light concerning the large number of dead people, so I asked again, because I was of the opinion that I had watched the first human beings on earth. The light answered, however, hundreds of thousands. I was amazed at this, and I could feel how the light was suffering from the great number of dead people. Now, I just wonder here again, because granted he is gruff and all this other stuff, but maybe he's one of our heroes. Maybe he really is one of those, demigods from the Greek mythology, or, could be a million different beings, but maybe he really is a guardian of our world. And maybe that's why he's so gruff, because he's a warrior in some aspects, or protector. But if this is not a manipulation and he truly is being, suffering, thinking about the amount of dead people, then that's just an interesting note to have. I am not quite sure about what happened next, but all of a sudden I heard a thunderous, angry voice accusing humankind, including myself, of destroying his garden on earth. Now this is where it just switches up and gets very interesting. And I am not clear, so you let me know what you think, because you can see the text here, if it's the light or that's saying this, or just another random voice, because I would assume that it's another random voice, because he would just say the light said. So the same way he only heard the voices of the first two beings when he first came to this world, I think another one is not showing himself to him, or he's not able to see him, because maybe he's in another dimension, and is so upset and angry and just pissed off that he can't control his anger. And I see this a lot in these beings, and just blurts this out. I made you human beings a wonderful garden, and you destroyed everything. Now this is when the Anunnaki, from the beginning, I kind of always think it's an Anunnaki. I blame them on for everything, because I'm me. But this is when I was like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. A garden on earth, is it called Eden? You're getting upset about that? So if you don't know the Anunnaki story, look it up and then come back to this whole moment right here and tell me what you think, because it sounds like it could be most likely Enlil, that's my assumption, but you tell me what you think. Okay, so it says human beings poison the water and the air. They destroy everything. At first, the effect of their work of destruction was limited. However, it got worse and worse. They destroy everything that they can lay their hands on. Although man is constantly looking for other places, he has only this one earth, one place. You could see for yourself. And if they continue to destroy everything, they will blow up the whole earth in the end. I was completely perplexed, and I'm going to end it there. That was a lot, but this is where it just switches up and gets 10 times more interesting, because he's also saying that all mankind has is the earth, and that will scare a lot of these uber rich people who have no problem destroying us and crapping on the rest of the world, but are trying to go to the moon or Mars. And it also, I guess, attests what a lot of people who are really into the UFO, UAP, and that whole world of aliens, where they're saying that there's installations where humans can live. I mean, not easily, so maybe that doesn't attest what they're saying, but they say that there are places on the moon and Mars. I don't know if there's any other planets, but at least those 2 planets where people either live within underground or are able to live above land in in controlled environments. But obviously that wouldn't work for all of mankind. So yeah, it makes you wonder if Earth really is the only inhabitable planet in this solar system, and that we really are destroying the only thing that we have. And that could also be the reason for so many negative ETs trying to do all these manipulations and plans and plots and twists, because they've destroyed their own planets, through these same reasons and aggressions and plots, and all the reasons why we destroyed this planet, or destroying this planet. And they are trying to take over. They're trying to get us out and take over. The constant fight for real estate, right? The constant fight for land. It seems to be even beyond our planet. This is an issue. But yeah, so I just feel like whoever this was could not hold their anger, and this is like I guess you could say a Freudian slip here, where they just expressed exactly who they were. And the reason why I say this too is, and I don't want to, I don't want to spoil where this goes, but there's a reason why I say that there's some things in here that were not meant to make it to us. They definitely made a couple of slips here that can show who they are and what their purpose is. So I'll leave it at that. It's a lot of stuff to think about in general, and I think the next video should be the last part of this video. Peace.